What's up, Book Talk? I have finally done it. I have finally finished the longest fantasy book I've ever read. And guess what? It was fantastic. I have just finished, like 5 minutes ago, To Green Angel Tower by Tad Williams, the third and final book in Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. And it was everything I was hoping for in this book and so much more. This book was awesome. This book was everything I wanted this conclusion to look like. I mean, this series from the Dragonbone chair, I knew immediately was going to be something special, you know? It was just one of those things where sometimes you just know instantly when a book is going to click for you or when a series is going to click for you. And within the first few hundred pages, I knew that this series was going to be magical. I knew I was going to love it. Because I've learned that I'm really into classical fantasy, apparently. I really like the stereotypical, good versus evil, Lost King kind of thing, Chosen One tropes, all of that. It's why The Wheel of Time is my favorite series of all time. And it explains why I love this series so much. But to Green Angel Tower, I mean, this boy was a chunker, guys. This is 63 hours and some minutes on audio. I think it's like 1,300 pages in print. I mean, it's probably one of the longest fantasy books of all time. I don't know if it's the longest, but it's one of the longest. It's certainly the longest I've ever read. It's probably, on audio at least, as near as long as War and Peace, if I remember correctly, from when I read that in high school. But yeah, I mean, let me just get straight into why I like this book so much, and whether you should read it or not. Besides it being just absolutely massive, this book has everything that you could want in traditional classic fantasy. It has the heroes overcoming great odds. It has mystical and cool magic that is really trippy, but it's not too heavily magical. It has the cool, weird weapons. It has the incredible adventure and transformation of cast of characters. It has great dialogue. It has great world building and lore, and the story is just so neatly wrapped together that it's hard to comprehend, When I finished Stone of Farewell, there were so many questions I had, so many things. I'm not going to spoil any of them, but it definitely leaves you on a spot where you're like, okay, but I need to know what happens. And you're thinking, yeah, this last book, it's absolutely massive. It's an absolute chunker, 60 plus hours, right? But there's no way that he can tie all these threads together into a final book. He's going to need another one. But I should have never believed that, because Tad is just one of the best authors I've ever read. The first half of this book, I think for a lot of people, might not be like their favorite thing ever, but I love this story front to back. I thought the battles were excellently done. I thought the sections where certain characters were going through certain events, and I'm trying so hard not to spoil anything, were just brilliant. There's a lot of really trippy, you won't know exactly what's going on. Is it a dream sequence, or is this actually just part of the magic? That's kind of how Austin Ard feels in general. It's very trippy, it's very weird, it's very different, and I love it for that. I think a lot of fantasy authors are afraid of making their world feel magical, but Williams never was. And the way that he wraps this all together in this neat little bow and sends you off feeling, kind of it's a happy but sad feeling all at once is just incredible. I mean, the last time I read an end of a story like this where I felt such a mixed feeling of, I'm relieved that most of the characters got great endings, but I'm also sad for those who didn't. I mean, it's got to be A Memory of Light. I think if A Memory of Light is my favorite finale to any fantasy book I've ever read, to Green Angel Towers, like right there. I mean, it's second place, and it's not close. This book is absolutely incredible, and if you haven't started Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, and you are interested in a fantastically written, obviously inspiring fantasy series, please read this one. It has great characters, it has great action, it has great dialogue, it has just so many great wholesome moments, and so many moments where you are going to feel seriously anxious for the characters and the world, and you're gonna be wondering, how could the author wrap this all up? How can the author write like this? And then he does it, and you're like, whoa, that was incredible. So, yeah, overall, To Green Angel Tower is one of my favorite reads this year. Easily one of my favorites this year. And it is the best of the trilogy. So, I gave The Dragonbone Chair a 9.8. I gave Stone of Farewell a 9.5. And I'm going to give To Green Angel Tower a 10 out of 10. There are flaws, but those flaws are very easily overwritten by the magnitude of how great this story is. I'm not going to say that this book is going to hit for everyone, obviously, but for me, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn and Tad Williams has become one of my favorite authors in fantasy, and Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn has become a top 5 favorite series for me. I mean, I think that this is the greatest fantasy trilogy I've ever read. Period. I mean, this is how you write a trilogy. This is how you write 3 epic, great, classical fantasy books. If you want an example of someone who I think is a great example, I guess, of how to write great classical fantasy, you want something more traditional, look no further than Tad Williams, because this was goated. I mean, this is everything I've been wanting to read since finishing The Wheel of Time. I mean, this is just incredible. This series is everything I love about fantasy and so much more. And I cannot wait to read more by this guy. I cannot wait to read Last King of Ostenard. I cannot wait to read the sequel series, because I know it's going to be fantastic. And I think Williams, until the day he dies, is going to be an instant buy author for me, because he's just proven at this point that he's one of the best out there. It was an experience like no other. Longest fantasy book I've ever read. One of the longest books I've ever read, period. And I enjoyed it all the way through. And I can't wait to reread it. I mean, it's that good. So, if I haven't convinced you to read it, please do. I mean, it's maybe not for everyone, but I think if you're like me, you like that classical fantasy feeling, you're a big fan of Wheel of Time, you're a big fan of A Song of Ice and Fire to a degree, but you want something a little bit more classical, a little less grim, then I think the series is really going to fit for you. Yeah, it's fantastic. One of the best ever. And one of my favorites of the year, and probably any year I've ever read. So, there you go.